Yeah, and that's the largest amalgamation of mammals in the world. It's Bracken Cave by San Antonio, Texas, and it's the Mexican free-tailed bats. When there's like 12 to 20 million bats in the summer in a single cave. So cool. Oh, this work. So here's a bat. This is how it catches a moth with its tail. Yeah. So as this is slow motion, you can look this up. It has ultrasound, like the actual calls. And so what happens is it's calling back here, and its calls are click, click, click. But as it gets closer, it goes click, 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 because it's calling out more to get more and more detail, faster and faster and faster, because it's getting closer to the moth. That one missed it. Sorry, bud. So see how it's directing its mouth? It's echolocating at that moment. So that, oh. And this is what you're seeing as you watch bats foraging over your deck, which is just so fun to watch. There's actually moths that have bat jammers as well, where as the bats are echolocating, the moths emit another ultrasound, which conflicts with that. And so the bats are like, and go that way and miss. So cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be any of the hibernators can use that. Little brown bats, big brown bats are gonna be using bat boxes fairly regularly. Indiana bats and Northern longhorn bats have, so they might be there as well. But you really need like me to go up there and catch them and go, okay, that's a this, because they're all little and brown. And the only way to identify the difference between an Indiana bat and a little brown bat is a tiny little projection of skin on their ankle. And that's it. And I was trained 10 years ago and looking at over like hundreds of these guys to be able to go, okay, yeah, that's a that. Right? So all our bats are dying because of white nose syndrome. How many people have heard of white nose syndrome? Okay, good. Fungal infection caused by Pseudogymnoascus destructans, which is fun to say. We end by 9, right? 9:30. Okay. Yeah, we can take a break at some point too, although we're getting close. Killed 6 million bats since 2006, and this is a 2014 number. We stopped counting the number of bats that died. We do know the relative loss of population, 90 to 100% population loss in certain areas. New York, where this started, most of the bat species there are just gone. We only pretty much have big brown bats and red bats and hoary bats in that area. Introduced by dirty cavers, really actually dirty. They didn't clean their equipment off as they caved in France, where this is probably from, went over to Howe's Cavern, New York, and touched a wall. And that fungus got onto the wall and spread. So dirty cavers, although I love caving. Just bleach your stuff. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Did you ever go to France?
I am a hiker too.
So there's Howe's Cavern. Oh, do I have to push play? Let's change this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, really. It entered Indiana in 2011. A little bit. There it's in Seattle. That wasn't a bat. That was a person. And this is 2020. Since then, it's in California, Nevada, Nebraska, and it's starting to get even further this way to where the Western bat biologists are like, holy crap, what do we do? right? So yeah, it's not great. It's difficult to reduce infection or mortality because it's really difficult to apply disinfectants. Bleach will kill pseudogymnoastis destructans, but then you have to grab each bat and plunge it into bleach. Yeah, or spray bleach on, but you have to make sure you get every single bat. And obviously that's not good for bats. And they're easily reinfected because bats are highly social animals. They actually cuddle together during the hibernation, and that's what we call cuddles of bats. Down in southern Illinois, where we got that 70,000 bats, those are Indiana bats, they cuddle in groups of several thousand. Kind of like penguins do in the Antarctic. Yeah. And then you have some bats from other hibernacula, other caves, that just switch caves in the middle of the winter. So if you bleach everything in one cave, one bat just whoop, and now it's got white nose syndrome again. Right? Another thing that's difficult is if you bleach the entire cave, it also kills off native funguses and bacteria and everything. And that's a very unstable ecosystem that you just wiped off the face of the earth, and we don't want to do that. We're trying a bunch of different things. Sunlight can kill this. So some people have essentially made, they've taken old fallout shelters that some bats have moved into, put a UV radiation light and just blasted it, and it does clean off the white nose syndrome, the fungus. But the bats don't like it very much, so that doesn't really help. We've actually created a vaccine. It works, but then you have to inoculate every single bat, so it's not super practical. We're trying to create a bacteria that eats the fungus. That's always dangerous, so we're backing off of that. There's a whole bunch of different things that we're trying. None of it's practical, right? But what we have found is that some bats are actually evolving resistance. That's been documented. The problem is, do they evolve it fast enough to avoid dying because of it? And in New York, no. Right? So hopefully we have some bats left over. The bats in Indiana are actually doing relatively well compared to others. So I'm optimistic, but the corn. We don't know for sure.
So what's the situation in Europe if this is where it
Oh, good question. The diversity of bats in Europe is like 4, right? It's just very down. It's not 4. It's maybe like 10 in all of Europe. We have 54. So the prevailing hypothesis is that white nose went through, killed off a bunch of species hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and the ones that survived built up a resistance to the ones that are left over. And so what's in Europe might be United States in, 50 years. I don't know. Really don't know what's going to happen. And it's interesting. I came into the bat biologist world as this was happening, and to see the whole thing of us going, what are we going to do? And then just like depression. And now we're like, I wonder if it's going to be all right. No. So we're placing effort into increasing recruitment, which means more of these. That's a neonate little brown bat. And if we can increase the prevalence of really good summer maternity colony habitat, these bats form maternity colonies. All of the mothers co-roost and raise their pups together. If we can make more, the boys just go somewhere else. We don't care about them because there's no parental care. Boys, whatever. We care about the females. If we can make more of that, we can make more babies. We have something like this. That's a chimney with over 500 little brown bats on it. If each one of those makes one baby, because they only make one baby each summer, then maybe we can keep things going for a while until they can evolve a resistance. Right? Potential impacts of bat declines. Bats act as a natural pest control. They save United States farmers about $3.4 billion in pesticide services every single year. If there's no bats, that's going to cause ag an additional $3.4 billion worth of insecticides. That insecticides are going onto our crops. That's going to cost the consumer more money. It's going to give them more chemically enhanced or I guess radiated food. No good. With significant declines of bat populations, increased use of pesticides, increased cost of food, right? And here's that paper if you want to look it up. It's Boyle's 2011, and it's in the journal Science. It's really pretty cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So white nose syndrome is similar symptoms to athlete's foot, which doesn't sound too bad. It's very itchy, right? It also can necrotize flesh, which means it will eat flesh. But the bigger issue is the itchiness, because the bats wake up from hibernation and lick it, clean it, get rid of it so they aren't itchy, and then they go back into hibernation. Every single time that they awake from hibernation, their fat reserves are cut down by 10%. So if they wake up too many times, they starve to death and die. So white nose syndrome causes them to wake up more than they usually do. And as they wake up, they might go around trying to find insects, but it's the middle of the winter and there's nothing around. So those 6 million bats, probably closer to hundreds of millions, died because of starvation. Depression. All right. Any questions about bats? Oh, I forgot to talk about bat boxes, so we'll do that. Here's a bat box with a big brown in it. That's actually a big brown bat. It's an X big brown bat. But that's the size of a big brown. It's not very big. How many big browns can fit in this box? They're social. I would say probably about 50. If you add another chamber, you can probably get up to 100, because they hang out with one another, right? If this was a smaller bat, like a little brown bat or an Indiana bat, I'd call this 100 if they really wanted to, right? Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can put a flying chihuahua in that. So when you have a bat box, they work, but they really only work in areas where there's no natural roosts. So if you have a forest nearby your house, like a really good forest, with standing dead trees, because they like to roost in underneath bark of dead trees, they might not want to use your bat box. Your bat box might be like a last resort, because those snags, standing dead trees, fall down. And if there's no more snags around, this is looking a lot better. And this might save them from leaving your area. Yeah.
Let's say I had a conservation crew, the teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
For several summers, we put up bat houses around the zoo.
Yep.
And then we'd go check them. And then the next year we'd go check them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're all those nice trees.
Yep.
They never want to.
So I did my PhD by the Indianapolis International Airport, where there's a colony of endangered Indiana bats just right outside the airport. They put out 3,000 bat boxes in the 90s. They didn't use them until 10 years after. So Dallas, yeah. And now they're only using bat boxes because there's a bunch more warehouses there. There's a lot of forest cut down.
Yep.
There's not that many snags around. So this is their last resort. And if these fall down, then that bat colony, which has been there since at least the 80s, is going away. Right? So these can be really important. But that's not the end-all, like, management thing, right? You put these out, and then you try to grow more trees really quickly to replace the snags, right? But for these guys, put them 15 feet up, put them in areas that are highly solar exposed, lots of warm sun. They like it baking in there because that's where their pups go. They want their pups warm. Put them away from trees, but within like 10 to 20 feet from them, because if something like a raccoon attacks this, they want to go and hang out somewhere else, like on a tree or something like that, right? And usually facing southeast, which is where they get the most sun for the longest period of time. And then if you put them up and you don't get bats, keep hope. My dad, which made this, he put one up on his house, and it didn't. I checked every once in a while, and I happened to see one bat like 10 years later. So then you might get some use without even knowing it. All right, so we'll end with the carnivores. This is order Carnivora, and these are meat eaters, but they're actually typically omnivores. But again, these are individuals in the order Carnivora, but there are other mammals that are carnivorous, meaning that they eat meat as well, right? Canine teeth are present in all because they use those to grab, hold on, and rip and tear. Canine teeth. Carnassial shears are developed, can differ based on whether or not they're scavengers or not. 5 toes on front foot, can have 4 or 5 toes on the hind foot. Close relatives to the familiar carnivores, this is a wolf. So other carnivores, including seals, sea lions, mongoose, mink, weasels, hyenas, a whole variety of different critters. First one we'll talk about is Procyon lotor, or the raccoon. This is a carnivore, order Carnivora. They nest in tree crevices and holes. They're very much nocturnal. They are the quintessential omnivore. They will eat anything, including your garbage. And they benefit from what's called mesopredator release. That happens when you kill apex predators, like the wolves. When you get rid of them from an area, they are no longer the top competitors, and they no longer eat the smaller predators. So that means the smaller predators become more prevalent. They have less to compete with, and they make a whole bunch more of them. And that's what's happening in Indiana. We've extirpated our wolves. Wolves should be here. And now you get other smaller predators that are doing much better, like coyotes. Right? Tough on turtles. They'll eat turtle eggs, tons of them. Birds, lots of other things. All right? Our most common carnivore, and we all have stories about cute little baby raccoons, very large, destructive adult raccoons. And they're sticking cute. Raccoon tracks. So they have the 5 toes, like I said, that kind of go straight up. They're not like the opossums that have the thumb, the obvious thumb. But the front foot is abbreviated. It's smaller. The hind foot is going to have more of a heel to it. Right? So the front foot and the hind foot are a little bit different. Make sense?
Yeah, the back has more heel.
Yeah. And you're going to find them going up to water because they clean their hands in water. You're going to find them crawling up trees. So when you're looking at behavior and it's doing all sorts of stuff, it's probably a raccoon. Canis latrans, the coyote, 20 to 40 pounds, may pair for life. Mate in early spring, 5 to 10 pups are born in a den in April. Can use woodchuck dens for raising their pups. Do sometimes take cats and dogs, but they are less of a predator of your family pet than just feral dogs. Wild dogs will be more likely to take your pet than a coyote. But who gets the blame? Coyotes. A lot of people say that we have a coyote problem. We don't really. You don't have to worry about them too much. I always tell people, if I get surrounded by a pack of coyotes, I'm fine. That's happened before. If I get surrounded by a pack of feral dogs, I am running as fast as I can. Because feral dogs are used to people. Coyotes run away. Yeah, feral dogs, no. These guys are hybridizing with wolves, hybridizing with feral dogs. And so now you have coy wolves, which are just big coyotes, and coyotes are highly intelligent. And you have, coy dogs? Yeah, coy dogs. So, and just also the typical coyote has started getting larger because they're filling the niche of the wolf. The wolf used to be the main predator of deer. Now there's not any. That deer is really big, really juicy, lots of energy. The coyotes are getting bigger to fill that niche, and they're also packing up into larger packs so they can take down. They're filling that niche of the wolf. Really cool critter, and I love seeing them. They're all over the place too. There's one in downtown Chicago sitting in a sandwich cooler because it was hot. Right? That everyone was like, "Oh, I'm so scared." It's just this tiny little coyote. No, they're not. Coyote tracks, it looks like a dog track. And that's just kind of what it looks like. Dog tracks, 2 toe pads in front, 2 toe pads behind that, and then the heel pad. Oh, and they usually you can see the claws. The only one that you can that you can mix this up with for dogs in general is kitty cats. Kitty cats, the toe pads are mostly in line, and they don't have the claws because the claws are retractable, and they don't have them out when they're walking. You can't differentiate between coyote tracks and dog tracks, especially since dogs come in every size flavor, from Great Dane to Chihuahua, right? It's not easy. But usually the best way to differentiate is, again, behavior. Coyotes know exactly where they want to go. And they go from point A to point B in a straight line. Dogs, they smell everything. Because it's, I'm outside, woo! Right? So they go in zigzags. And that's how you differentiate between a coyote and a dog. Red fox, vulpes, vulpes. Super cute. Much smaller than coyotes. Not always red. Silver fox is a real thing. They can come in silver. In fact, if you domesticate foxes for long enough, they become purely silver, and their ears actually turn into dog ears. It's wild, right? These guys are actually invasive. They are not native to North America. They are native to Europe. Yep. And they're actually, they're urban critters there. They brought them over to North America for the hunt, and then they just took over. And they are out competing our native fox, which is the gray fox, or Uroscience neri argenteus, which is my student's favorite name, because they have to spell it too. Once the more common fox in the eastern United States, red fox do better around people. Coyotes outcompete them. They are now, we're actually worried about them. And the Indiana DNR is actively working on seeing how bad they're doing here in Indiana. Right? But they are climbers. They will climb trees. They will climb rock faces. Yep. Super cool guys. And I have that fur. They're just stinking beautiful. Now, the main difference between these two, besides size, is a red fox usually has a red coat, but it can be different. They have a white tail tip. Gray fox has a black tail tip. Okay.
Other than that, they have kind of the same red.
Usually gray foxes are more silver. This one's a weirdly red one, but not nearly as red as a red fox.
Have they started interbreeding at all?
No, they're two different. You notice that the genus is very different. They're so far apart evolutionarily that they probably just can't actually hybridize. Versus Canis latrans, the coyote, and Canis familiaris, Canis lupus, they're all the same genus. They can all hybridize really easily. Fox tracks.
Do we still have that native one?
Yep. In fact, one of our graduate students found a skull just right over there of a gray fox. Blew me away. Fox tracks, they're small. Coyote tracks, it's hard to differentiate them. It's a dog. There's different sizes. You're not going to see a wolf track. I mean, maybe, but I highly doubt it. I'd be more likely to call that a Great Dane than a wolf. Now let's get that. Lontra canadensis, North American river otter. This is a weasel. It is a giant weasel. Right? Eat anything but like fish, crayfish, amphibians, reptiles. And these guys were also overhunted and were extirpated from Indiana completely. But they were reintroduced in the mid-90s by the DNR, and now we find them everywhere. There's been some in Eagle Marsh, which I have yet to see. I need to see them, but super cool guys. And then you have their relatives, the mink, which we do have in Eagle Marsh, we have everywhere. And this is a relatively small one. We recently saw one that was about that big. And these guys are semi-aquatic. They will be in water just like a otter, but not nearly as much.
And they can be black, right?
Yeah,